Kuzampala everyone, my name is Jimmy Dojilode and I will be serving as the moderator for this podcast session. And today with me I have my two friends here.
Hello, I am Jimmy Matsuri.
Hi, my name is Sochun Pelmo.
And today we will be discussing a bit about our personal favorite books and our thoughts on this year's theme, Reading for a Digital Tomorrow. With us, we've brought a few of our favorite personal books, and with that, I'd like to ask Tsitim to tell us a bit about her personal favorite book.
My personal favorite book is Look Back by Tatsuki Fujimoto. So, to tell a brief description of the book, it's about two girls who love art, and the two of them, they bond together and then they create more art together. So, I'll not spoil it that much, but I will get to the part that they do end up in a argument later on, and then they separate their ways, and then they stop talking to each other until one of the girls receives a phone call from her parent talking about a terrible incident that happens to the other best friend.
And what about you, Jim Metal?
I've chosen a book called Schoolgirl by Dazai Osamu. It's really short, it's a novella, and this book, it's unlike a lot of other books that I've read. The entire book just talks about a single day in this unnamed teenage Japanese girl. And so basically, on the surface, there's not much going on. It's her doing her daily stuff, but then all the drama is in her head. And then we come to know that she is a girl who wakes up with a huge load of self-loathing and also ends the day in the same way.
So, a few very dark books, huh? I would also like to talk a bit about my personal book. Because the theme of this year's reading week is digital, I've actually chosen a webtoon. If you don't know what a webtoon is, it's a comic basically originated in South Korea. And if you want to find this book, you can look it up on the app Webtoon. It's called School Bus Graveyard, and it's an incomplete series at the moment, but the basic premise of the story is that this new girl, she moves to a new town and she tries to basically adjust into this new life with new friends. And on the first day, they're assigned a project that they have to do on a school trip in a small town in Alabama. So on the way there, their bus breaks down, and while they spend their day in town waiting for the bus to get fixed up, they meet a mysterious woman who offers them a free tour of a mansion nearby. And with nothing else to do, they accept the tour. And when they go into the mansion, the woman slips away, and it's basically just this group of friends exploring the mansion. And that's when, from the corner, they get attacked by this demonic, monstrous creature. And the monster actually manages to hurt one of the girls pretty badly. So then, of course, they all freak out, and then they start fighting back against the monster. And the monster eventually just disappears like it was never there. And when they check the injuries that they sustained when fighting this monster, they realize that the injuries are not there also, and the pain has also suddenly disappeared. And that's when the mysterious woman from before comes back and basically tells them that she had no idea where they went, they just vanished. So on their way back to the bus, they basically contemplate if what they saw was all real and what they experienced was all real. And they all go home that night, and then they go to bed. And when the clock strikes midnight, all of them wake up in this demonic world, basically, where the sky is bloodshot red, the trees are twisted, and they have no leaves. And as far as the eye can see, everywhere is surrounded by these demonic monsters that attack them at the mansion. So obviously they're freaking out, and then they start running away from these monsters and basically defending themselves. And some of them actually think that it's a dream, a bad dream. But like when one of the monsters manages to catch up to them and actually rips one of their arms off, that's when they realize that the pain is very real. So then they start fighting, and they eventually end up in an abandoned warehouse where they barricade themselves inside. And basically they take turns staying guard, making sure that the monsters don't get in and basically, unalive them. So when the clock strikes 7 in the morning, they all wake up back where they were before the clock struck 12. And that's when they all think, is this just a nightmare, And then they go to school that day and they discuss among themselves about the dream that they had. And it turns out that all of them had the same dreams, so they think, it can't be a coincidence. So that night they try and do an experiment where they sleep together in the same place. And just like the last night, when the clock strikes midnight, they all get teleported back to that abandoned warehouse. where they left off the previous night. So that's basically the gist of the story, and the entire story follows this group basically getting over their personal issues and figuring out the mystery of this, satanic world. So I don't want to go too in depth because that would end up spoiling the webtoon, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. So with that, I'd like to ask you guys a few questions about your personal favorite books. We'll start with Sitim. I did want to ask you, how did this book affect you? Like, did it affect any aspects of your life, socially, mentally, physically?
Well, I'd like to mention one incident, if that's okay. So it's with me and one of my closest friends. So when we were little, we were super close, but then as we grew older, we sort of got distant from each other until we lost communication at some point. And then this book also touches on topics of what's the word?
Losing a very important friend in your life.
Yeah, losing a very important friend in your life. So the main character who receives the phone call from her parents regarding her other close friend, she thinks back to like where she did wrong, like what could have she done better to keep their friendship going on. And it also made me think the same, like what went wrong with mine, like what went wrong with me and my friend. So yeah, so like to summarize, I think this book is like a good reflection on your past experiences, and then like a good reflection to reflect back on like what you did and stuff.
I see.
It's called Look Back, for a reason.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say that this story is mainly about what ifs, like decisions we wish we'd taken or regrets we have. I also personally have a few experiences in dealing with friends that I wish I could have done things differently, and we could have stayed together, but unfortunately the universe had different plans. With that, I'd like to move on to Jimmy Meto. Do you think you could tell us a bit about how this book affected your life?
I found this book very relatable, and because it was relatable to me, I also found it to be very comfy, So I'll say this line that the unnamed girl, the main character, she goes, "Glasses are obstructions to our feelings. They hide everything we show on the face, like passion, fury, happiness, sorrow." And she also states, "It's curious how it's almost impossible to communicate with our own eyes." And I feel like this quote talks about the barriers we put, between the world and our true selves. And since this is like such a universal feeling, we all have things that we hide because we're so, afraid of being judged. And she also really talks about how if she truly showed how intense her emotions were, then she would be judged or rejected. And since this just sort of really resonates with me, I found it really comforting. She also talks about how stepping into adulthood as this really lost teenage girl scared her so much to a point where she wanted to just go off without doing anything. And I also find it relatable because it's really kind of scary, we're just children and we're stepping into this world without any guidance. So I found it really relatable and comforting. And it also, made me think that since the author himself is a guy and he's literally writing the perspective of a teenage girl, and since he captures it so well, it made me think maybe we could all understand each other the way the author understands a teenage girl. And as a teenage girl myself, I was amazed at just how well he captured the emotions. So I thought we could all understand each other and we wouldn't have to put in any barriers between ourselves and the world, So I thought it really helped me come in peace with myself.
I see. Well, I think I can also say that I've experienced something similar, especially coming to a new school, high school. It's like a big change in your life. When I first came to Mutithang, I also felt similar, I was afraid, what if I do this? Would it affect my social image? And would people start ignoring me, No one wants to ruin their reputation on the first day of school. But, I've also personally grown to kind of be myself and not think about what other people, think about me or their opinions on me. Because at the end of the day, what you think of yourself is all that matters. So I'm honestly really happy that you also feel the same way. Makes me feel a bit less lonely.
Mm.
Okay, well, with that, I'd also like to talk about how my webtoon made me feel. Honestly, it was an amazing story at first, you know. I read it purely for entertainment because I didn't think, you know, it's a supernatural book. I mean, like, you know, there's not much we can relate with real life, you know. So I read it purely for entertainment purposes. But then, like, the deeper I dove into the plot, you know, how these kids are forced into such an unfamiliar situation. Like you said, you know, they're just kids, but they're like thrust into this world where they're forced to make hard decisions, you know, and they can't let their emotions affect their judgment. So yeah, I totally, you know, I could like relate to these characters because these characters are teenagers themselves around our age, you know, and basically the bonds they form between each other in life-threatening situations, you know, the bravery, the selflessness, and like how the human personality is basically shown bare when your life is on the line. So that really, you know, made me think about all the stuff that we do on a daily basis, you know. Do we do it for ourselves or do we do it for other people around us? And with that, I would like to ask, this time we'll start with Jim Meto. Would you recommend this book to friends, families, or your peers?
I would recommend this book actually because, like I said, the book really talks about how this, you know, teenage girl, on the outside she's all whimsical, but then on the inside there's just too many things going on, right? And so if if people around us read it, then maybe they would understand that not all the things that we do on the outside is really how what we feel, you know, and not all the things that we do or say are what we actually mean. And like I said, the author is a guy, but he just delves into like the emotions of a teenage girl. And if a man could understand how a teenage girl would feel so well, then I think that if people read this book, they would also be able to empathize more, you know. And since nowadays we are having sort of a drought in, you know, empathy in people, I feel like reading the book would remind us again that we are all just humans trying to look best and trying to fit in with others. And also that when we do things, we don't really mean it, and do not take everything personally, and to like stop overanalyzing, because again, like I said, we're all just trying our best and trying to perform our best on the stage that we live in. So
Yeah, I totally did. I wanted to put a bit of emphasis on that lack of empathy part because I 100% agree. I'm sure you guys have also experienced this on social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, you know. People can post anything these days, and then the comments are full of trolls, rage baiters, and basically people who hate for the fun of it, you know. They create alt accounts and then they say the most atrocious things, you know, for, you know, without thinking about how it could affect the person who is posting these things. So like, yeah, I totally do agree that this world definitely needs more empathy, and if the book you're reading can bring a bit more empathy into the world, then I definitely think that more people should be reading it. And with that, Titim, do you think you would recommend this book to other people in your life?
Yeah, totally. I would recommend this to like literally anyone because it's a book about friendship, and then and then the author takes a really fresh take at that, and then like it's such a refreshing read, and also the two main characters, they are really adorable, you know. And then like I really fell in love with both of them, and then like I was like deeply attached to both of them. And it also has an anime adaptation, you know. It's the same name, Look Back, and like they adapted the manga or the book really like exact to the plot in the manga, and then also
I actually watched the anime. I also read the same book she did, and I must say, you know, Fujimoto's art style is like so unique compared to other mangakas, and the way the anime version of the manga captured it was so done well. I actually shed a tear.
Well, this kind of nullifies the next question I was going to ask, which was, you know, do you guys have a favorite art style when it comes to things? I'm sure you guys know that there are like hundreds, if not thousands, of mangas these days, especially the popular ones like One Piece or Demon Slayer, stuff like that. Do you guys have like a personal preference when it comes to animation style?
Mm, I really, 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 really like the art style of this anime called Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. And like it's just so the details there and then the coloring so beautiful. And I also really like the art style of this manga called The Summer Hikaru Died. It's just laid bare and it's so beautiful. Yeah.
I see. So like, al- well, I'd be lying if I said I heard about those before, but I'll make sure to add those to my ever-growing list of things to watch during my winter vacation. What about you? Do you have like any animation styles you love?
Um, well, I like there is this like very underrated author, and then I forgot her name sadly, but she was the author behind this manga, a one-shot manga called Boy Meets Maria.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then like I love that art style because they use like a lot of beautiful sorts of like so if you can see in the cover art of the book, they use such beautiful color schemes, like
Mhm.
a hint of like cyan blue with pink, and then like they blended well together so much. And then I loved every single one of her manga panels. Like uh, I I I genuinely can't get over it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I myself am an artist, so I definitely will be checking out her work because God knows I'm horrible at color theory. So if anything could teach me how to color better, then I definitely start watching it. So with that, oh, I did want to mention that the artist for the webtoon that I talked about, School Bus Graveyard, is Red. In case you guys wanted to look for it, and there are other School Bus Graveyards. I didn't want you guys getting mixed up. So that's just to put it out there. With that, I think it's time we moved on to the theme of this year's Mutitang's theme of this year's reading week, reading for a digital tomorrow. So this is the hard-hitting question I wanted to ask you guys. Do you think that the way things are progressing now is a good thing? How people are starting to open their doors to more modern ways of consuming media, right? Before it was like the only way to read a good story was by flipping pages and having a physical copy in your hand. But these days, there are different ways of telling a story. There's lyrical stories. I'm sure. Have you guys heard of Yayloker?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I love
yeah.
them.
So they tell stories through music videos, and but of course you need technology to consume their media. So stuff like that. Do you think that digital reading is better, or should we stick to our old traditional ways of having a physical copy in our hand? We can start with Sitim.
I think yes and no. Like there's like two sides to a coin, right? Yes, because not everyone gets the time and the money and the effort to like buy a book and then take it anywhere. Like first of all, you could lose your book. Second of all, you could like ruin your book by yourself, or someone else could ruin it, or like any misfortune could happen. But I mean, it does give you this feeling, like I own this book, like this book is mine, like this sort of like mine, me, like feeling, right? But like I think reading digitally is also really good because like you get more access to like newer content, like
Yeah,
you're like a
totally.
faster access, like you get an like immediate update of like the media you were reading or you're watching, and also like you can get more exposure, right? Like when you just own one book, like it's rare to see more people who know this same author you're
Mhm.
reading. But when you're reading online, you could ask anyone online, and then they'd probably also recommend you, or like you could form new friendships and stuff like that. So I think I'd be on the fence on this part.
I see. What about you, Jim Metal?
I'm with her as well. But the thing about me is, I really like the feeling I get when I physically own the book that I like,
Yeah.
But I don't own any books that I like right now. So I would say the progress we're going with, right, with the digital tomorrow, I think it's nice because, like she said, digital like reading in general just opens you up to like a lot more themes, and like if you're interested in this one media, then you could consume a lot other medias that are similar to it. So it really helps you find your taste and what you like. And again, all the other advantages of digital reading, you know, it's easy to access, it's way cheaper, and also you could have it anywhere you go as long as you have a device to, you know, look with it. And then as for traditional ways of reading, I can only say that the feeling that you get when you have it, you know, the my feeling, that's a really nice thing. Yeah.
I see. Well, I definitely think that the way our country is now is definitely a good thing then, because, you know, if for people like Jim Meto who like holding a book in their hands, we have an abundance of libraries scattered all across the country, but at the same time, it's not impossible to access digital forms of stories. So, you know, it's a win-win situation for everybody involved, you know, and that is a really good thing, because I feel like our country definitely needs to basically keep up with the rest of the world, and the best way to do that is through reading. And with that, I do think we're out of time, so this will be the end of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for your input here, and yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.